Thus I have heard. At one time, the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of Vulture Peak Mountain, with a great gathering of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in the samadhi of the many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, saw the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, "How should a son of a lineage train who wishes to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom?" Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva answered the Venerable Shariputra with these words. Shariputra, those men and women of the lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. The five skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness. And having no characteristics, they are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no phenomena. There is no quality of sight and so on until no quality of mind and no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance, and so on up to no old age and death, and no exhaustion of old age and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no ending, and no path. No wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide by means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have no obscurations, they have no fear. Transcending falsity, they attain nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times have relied upon the perfection of wisdom, and have become true and complete Buddhas of unsurpassable, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, The mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, for it is not deceptive. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Teata om gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhi soha. Shariputra, this is how a bodhisattva mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and said to the bodhisattva mahasattva, noble Avalokiteshvara, that he had spoken well. Well done, O son of the lineage, it is so. O son of the lineage, since it is just so, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Sharadvati Putra and noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva and the entire gathering, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One.
多觉前波的是多觉讲，就在的罗巴达那罗巴，别着着别巴达阿的上，要联系了就了所瓦的，上巴多别也见到这的，觉得对月的当着别别，现在过上了年三年吧。了解是别解了所望的，要有别修结了诸头，那我找把的别可就去，上界观众爸爸要是错，三摩大愿解了所望的。协助大别中阿天上，嘎当天边面火中对见，连着那些过去送那送，嘎当拉巴那拉送我的，阿杰是的所见送阿巴，我到日边，我就见所见，当阿天边大波开住见。要是就把这拉索瓦的，要说个的拉玛多杰长，卡拉高的些年自罗的，说到天魔无助自这边，这些拉玛那拉索瓦的，让叫索罗跟拉大耶边。给上大把这边叫我叫，这边这边大概这把也，现在些年能拉说我的，叫我个多要大拉巴大，这边这边拉拉些紧，啥都拉就有点绕多的，多就交给我。热多说所解决，所解就能了，想就不多到的叫做，大约解所能解，若了平时上，若不说所解决，所解就能了，想就不多到的叫做。大约别所能见，若罗变现上，若不说上界就，若界就能拿下就不多大内就成。大约别所能见，若罗变现上界就不说。哎呀，要得两把老师多吃吧，吃吧是给们，那个别吵出去，导演可。
忙去等等，像
啊，
像没得刚刚在做的东西等等，
那些这没，得这他开始看也不也，他那些接的接那没些，得人要差多，你看大家东北的下一个当地嘛，当地人的给全部都得这种的，那大家这个是在弄过大学，这个去，大家也嘛都要拿钱嘛对吧？啊，对去，他们说的这的，他们说你们真的了。啊，叉叉现在得了嘛，进了，叉叉别站着我去到那么这点热爱的热话他，去单去吧，生意去打开，但是让些生意去嘛的，他们大家点吧陪伴呢，说的俺们就直接在那么把去他看看，你新鲜的写啥了，那样，他第一节上俺说热爱的人，现在俺说的刚老乡的是那些的，数据帮不了，数据结果是老有没搞了，那你看上了了呢，你数据细节了的，你他们看着就这个都。对进去看到的，看这个切个多，那说了这样，看上了到底说了这什么希望这个说土多呀，现在对我怎么这点弄了，各个给切学几来多啊？
As long as we have taken a rebirth within this cyclic existence, we're all subject to undergo a common experience, which is the experience of dying. That is, no one can escape from that situation. including right from the beginning, they think about our own teacher, who's the founder of our, Dharma, the Buddha Shakyamuni, all the way to our teachers, great masters, and our, root teachers and so forth, have gone through a same situation of dying. So we all have no escape of that. Now, now we, as a human beings, human beings endowed with this leisure and fortune, we should look at ourselves and we witness ourselves as the great masters of the past have said, that we need to, reflect inward rather than outward. Reflect inward and then try to look at our own state of mind. And then the mental behaviors, must be observed very carefully. So we take this opportunity to really to observe our mental, observe our mental behavior and try to suppress that mental behavior that probably bring about troublesome to our life. So try our best to suppress that causes the troublesome, and try to work with that and medicate that and bring about a peace and harmony within one's continuum. So, although we may not be able to reflect ourselves, or we're not able to reflect on the entirety of the entire qualities of the Buddha, body, speech, and mind, we should try to see whether there's some kind of special feeling that we may be able to experience when we are visualizing Buddha Shakyamuni before oneself. And similarly, we may not have a understanding of the profound and the vast teachings of the Buddha, but when we are reflecting our mind upon the suffering sentient beings, while we are reflecting our mind on the suffering sentient beings, is there any sort of feelings, the special feeling that we are experiencing or not? So that we have to look at ourselves, and this is one thing that we really need to practice ourselves, to see whether you're your feeling changes, what kind of special feeling that you may have by reflection upon such things. It's very, very important at this point. So it is true that we cannot really, challenge with all beings on this planet Earth. The beings are going through, living in this dazzling situation. So we cannot challenge them, and we cannot be like all the sentient beings. So now, important for us is to really to reflect within ourselves and witness, be one's own witness, rather than looking at others and talking about someone else. We should really reflect our mind upon oneself, and then really to talk about your own mind, how the mental behavior is. We should talk about that. So, so it is therefore, Shantideva has given us a beautiful advice that if the entire planet is covered by thorn, so we will not be able to find any clothes or the skins or leather that can cover entire entire planet, but rather the skillful means is to find a good shoes with a very strong sole, so that we can work on that by wearing these shoes, so that you will be protected by being pricked by those thorns. So in the same manner, we should not think of others, we should not talk about others, but we should talk about our own self. We should talk about our own mental behavior, and then try to calm our own mind.
다 된저게 생겨 초에 베토네 네 덤바 투병 뭐 랑게 된저 나가 되니라 네 덤바 투병 뭐라 네 랑레 집에 남아서 고등에 지제 네 될라 투저와 집에 다니 지제로와 네 랑다 지 맞선 디징엘로다 나게 랑게 나라 지 맞서 다다 카투든에 소스 지고데 지 많이 봐 네 타예비 선제 탕지기 냥도여 봐 네 여봐 되면 네 저더 레사게 네 덤발이야 세치대야 대파된 끼는 지 대바다 나시니 돈은 다나가 수치 지라는데 소리 지로아 된지기 천하 슈첨바 예배도네 다 맞죠 지 맞죠 인지기 저된라 싫어 예배고라 되는 나저다 된바로 지체다 되비도네 된지기 맞죠 지 인지지 산나도 니 된발라 비비 니 대바지 산나도네 니 가만히 지지 미가 책인다.
So let's begin with taking a couple of minutes to meditate by visualizing Buddha Shakyamuni, who is embodiment of compassion, who embodies compassion before oneself, and he is compassionately looking towards ourselves, and then he is then surrounded by all those great beings of lineage gurus, of the great teachers on the stages of the path enlightenment, as well as other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So then, imagining yourself being in their presence, you should generate a fervent devotion and faith towards all those great beings. And then you yourself is surrounded by all other sentient beings. So we should visualize great beings and imagining all sentient beings when you are surrounded, so undergo sufferings and so on. And having a faith towards the beings who are the great beings, and extending your unconditional compassion towards all other sentient beings.
哎呀，他这个给了七八节讲呢，那刚三八写一句，那上就浪就是八节。
With these motivations, teachings that we're discussing today is the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment, Chanchu Lam Rim Rinpoche.
我做跟那去一老先生的，给这些被告了，我的主要是这么当官的，就是话，看这讲呢，这个我做第三的嘛，是那老家常我们讲呢，这个这个干来的就讲呢，这看这讲呢，这个老先生当官那些是吧？我那的，他我做个菜的一点，就主要是那里老早的，人家通过开始就是说那老年轻早上干来讲个讲呢，就这听那个的知道吧？他做个南北用的那个些些别搞了，就那菜了他这的中国些呢，去的，看这讲的是呢，主要个了。
So we should ask the question to ourselves, why we have to spend that much time, our lifelong time on studying the Dharma, unlike the other studies, such as for our contemporary educations. In the contemporary educations, we about 20-something years, we will have completed studying whatever that you want to study. You will have a result, and you will be satisfied with what the studies that you have done in the 20-something years, in a modern education, in other words. But why this Dharma studies? Why we have to spend numerous years, life after life? Why we have to go through this, long time of studies? This kind of question should be asked to oneself.
哎，等这个主要跟你清不嘞？那等这个主要这个别搞了，可是就是呢，那就说我从这一呢，跟那让你就他妈干你来了，他妈没把那他把了可是真的，那他妈没把那得把的可是真的得把的，他我那等这个主要是一两个就越嘛的是呢，得寻求去讲个呢，路易人的呢，所以阿说的就这个么多啊。토마 내니가 정화를 생에 매바질라니 된주기 뒤서 뭔가 시비질라 가르치는 코고요. 대 코바대야 대화 되게 되지 코고를 마도 지 그어서는 코도를 마도 지 남에서는 지니 그어서는 지는 코에 말아. 단 더빠 여바 여가 지보지 그어상이를 된주 토마 매바 단다발을 해샤. 아니 다 단다들 그어상이 질을 때는 로서지 가요나 생이게 된주기 신주지 정행 제소나 아니 이제는 다 딘서버지 여사를 여사만의 생일이 되고요.
So this is a big question to ourselves. We should ask such question to ourselves. So just think about, from the beginningless time up until now, we have taken a rebirth within this cyclic existence or unenlightened existence. Time and again, but we have never been able to go beyond that. From the beginningless time up until now. So now the question is, why our rebirth is confined it only within this cyclic existence, within the samsaric existence? Is there a way that we can get out of this boundary? Is there a way that we can get out of this samsaric existence? So when you really carefully reflect your mind upon this, then you will see there is a purpose or meaning of taking our time to study the Dharma for life after life.
而且他的理解，他前面出现了么呢？那你我觉得这个啥， 다도 저희 람림 쳔모스에 다 람림 쳔모의 지발에 좀 쳔모 같이 지잖아 저희 사제를 장도를 봐도 저도 지발에 니 주고 쳔바 때문에 제바 비쳐와 니 당할 기바치 비치 추지 쳐와 니 쳐와니 다데베 쳐라 니 시테다 샤와 담방거 저 남아 제대 저이 뭐 저희 사제 제대지 소자지
So to begin the actual text, the great deities in the stages of path enlightenment, let's go through this 4 major outlines as usual. So this kind of major outlines can be found in most of those authentic treaties or the shastras. In the beginning, you will see that the teachings will begin by open by going through this first outline, such as the greatness of the teachings given in order to show the teachings as noble souls, and showing the greatness of the teachings in order to engender respect for the teachings, and how to listen to the teachings in which both teachings and its author are great, and the sequence in which the disciples are to be taught the actual instructions.
다 담방거 저 남아 제다를 저이 림발라 니지 나주 자와 현재 대비서도 되는 로치다 장이 봐 니지 다 도문리사 단 되는 로치다 장이 림발라 니 이 때는 님보는 비시 교와다 님보 제다는 비시 니지 도문리사 다 님보 제다는 비시라니 나지 나자랑 예버지서다 님보는 지금지 도문리사 다 님보는 지금을 송 주부 중요다 도모야 나지를 마냥서는 주부 된다 도모 주부 챔피언 나지를 마냥서는 지예지 다 도문이지 다 주부 챔피언 나지를 마냥서는 지라 송 태천은 주부 고 센제 코나데바 센데 제다 집에 주 센제는 쇼발로 지예지 다 도문리사 도문이지사 다 센제의 쇼발로지라 송 센제의 로발로 로그비 제세 토시레레와 사제메 두바테바 로발로베레 바지시바지 다 도문이지사 다 로발로베레 바지시바니 대바치바 쫄라로제다 치바도 로제티바로 지예지 다 도발로서 샤세제 로발로데자와 샤데 자세제 담바소 손에 제달레 지예지 다 도문이지사 다 손에 제달레 비출라니 와송 칼라로비제 텔라바디데 텔라로베레 바지 다 도문이지사 다 텔라 제달로베레 바이사 제달로베레 바니 쇼바쫄라로제다 치바도 파세 타바니로 지예지 다 도문이지사 다 파세 타바니로 지라 송外的主笔记主笔现在的哈多有偏写吧现在的电竞定义的根据理解这点吧现在的哈多就让对业务电竞个刚个比较菜个人也不说说老追的到东北干的那说说老追了你现在老追哈多老追的他拉动老追了送拉动就错点吧拉动刚比就刚比拉动就比菜东北了送长等于比长的等于的说着个种那的绿洲就过把这边出去大小啊那东北人刚比出去到东北人这到东北人刚比去了送一啥呀呀马里尼的在康南人就别人把的在康南人个刚比刚比我也在康南人就别人把的在康南人了在康南人刚把我也在康南刚把你了我样说的가샤 문진 바당 리베 가샤 문진 바당 그제 가샤 문진 바당 대 타라 관계 로요 당네 감베네 줄레체 바시치 네 당아서 거서 보다 대라 가샤 문진 베제 가마르 가샤 문 만지 베신로 가바 네 가샤 문진 랑로 자바 네 가샤 문진 주지 배쳐서는 다나가 거서 보고 같은 데서나 대코너니 때는 배발라 이제 가장 문제 제고 그래서 근데 가장 문제 제바달라 이제 가장 뭐 문제 베신로 가려야래서 대랑로 이 가려 가고 그래서 거서 보면 되지 당아도 돈이도 하던 라지를 제발라 아니 돈이 또 발라 돈 가장 문제 제고 다 가장 문제 제티 때라 이제 젠지 가장 문제 제다로 가장 문제 니 예배다네 젠지 가장 문제 제데레 아니 데 라노로 가장 문제 제티 태그 말에 세데레 내가
So we are now on the identification of object of negations. So when it comes to object identification, object of negation, there are object of negation that's identified by the other system, and object of negation that is identified by our own system. So how that our own system is actually refuting the object of negation that has been identified by the other system. So we are discussing on this chapter right now.
되지. 나타나 거스 법은 가서기만 제시 교육도 걸어 소소기 상반의 야거에 계속 가르치려고 해서나 아니 맞아 엄마 탄지와 생에 되게 조소지 추 탄지 장기 뭐주가 때려요 많이 에세지 아 이제다 되게 장기 뭐주가 매와이나 탄예도야 매고고 지금 말에 생에데 개가워.
So now the one thing that we need to remember or bear in our mind, important to bear in our mind, is that according to Madhyamika Prasangika standpoint, that everything that exists, everything, all phenomena, the entire phenomena, in other words, are devoid of intrinsic existence. There is no such, even a single entity, down to the atoms. There's no such that exists intrinsically. Whereas other system, if things doesn't exist intrinsically, if things doesn't exist its own side, and there shouldn't be any existence, they negate. If things lack the intrinsic existence, then it is in lack of intrinsic existence equals to the non-existence. It is by the other system. So this too should be we should bear in our mind.
디카스데 야시히지 저에나 르보게 라던 저와 니스 파월레 마데비 셔르 데뭐 데바 탄치 디카와 저로 소이지도 디게 된다 데레도 하시지 마루바 라시지 주바지 케말레와 예소나 아니 지 조소지 주 셰티 데다 카세마가 카세 자와이나 디투고 말에 샤도지 진데 디투고 말했어 라시지 마루바 켈니비 도네 아니 조소지 나자 가르치 켈레나야 텐데 켈렌자네 디투고레 데레는다.
So let's read this passage of the commentary on Ayadeva's 400 stanzas. Again, we already covered that during our previous session, but Rinpoche wants us to read once again here. It's pretty clear here. It's page 142, the last paragraph, where it says, essentially says that whenever things exist, there's essence. Like they are seen without essence. So without essence, essence would be completely non-existent. Like the horn of donkey, it says. Therefore, this essentialist cannot avoid being proponent of both extremes of permanence and of annihilation. Consequently, it is difficult to reconcile all of their experience, explicit assertions. So now here, what it's really saying here is now, if one rejects non-existence of intrinsicness, then it is very difficult. It is not only difficult, but we will not be able to establish things and event, or cause and effect, and the functionality of cause and effect. Whereas if one accepts the lack of intrinsic identity or lack of intrinsicness, then one will be able to establish the cause and effect, and one will be able to the functionality of cause and effects is tenable because of dependent originations.
哎呀，大家开始上上路的，但让些有没到有没结果的，把的大娃这边写完的马多亲戚，的没在我他就是农业，他这没的没多把盐的，说的盐的，的大上给我主把盐没都能送啊呢，缺的盐没都着了，的大那让些就东巴来接着亚萨点没呗，切大龙了，然后缺的有把对亲戚让给我开朗个本就了，的大那接着让心没见到。电汤与就嘛大不写三米，为大比他弄啊，一弄，电脑全汤就拉上给我主播的这样，对嘛呢？呢，没把多把约他，没动啊，赢了，电大那如果了说给我不能，电视那边动员我们都。民主为让给下瓦些吧了，退役比你些长呢，没比他帮我引弄，我是的，你自己做着的，啊，对吧？都落下了去的。
So let's read through the text here. The glorious Chandrakriti distinguish intrinsic existence from existence. He also distinguished the absence of intrinsic existence from non-existence. Unless you know this, you will no doubt fall to both extremes, and thus you will not know the meaning of the middle way, which is without extremes. For when it turns out be utterly non-existent, then since there will be no way at all to posit cause and effect within the emptiness of intrinsic existence, you will fall to an extreme of annihilations. Also, once you accept that phenomena exists, you will have to assert that it essentially exists. In that case, it will be impossible for you to treat cause and effect as similar to illusion in the sense that they appear to exist intrinsically, but where they do not. Consequently, you will fall to the extreme of permanence. Therefore, to avoid falling to the extreme of existence, you must realize that from the outside, all phenomena, like even the particles of essential existence, and to escape that extreme of non-existence, you must develop a definite knowledge that things such as seedlings nevertheless have the power to perform their own functions. That is, they do not turn into non-things which are empty of the capacity to perform functions. The clear definition between the absence of the intrinsic existence and non-existence also set forth in Chandrakriti's clear words.
对，这当我说的写吧家，这当让些就有把的，让些就没把当点的没把，呢，他呢都有把当没把生意，对于要的马些亲戚了，我们到我这里，他都把今年是一个嘛的说的啊，让些就没把你要马些呢，可对我现在对的，让些就没把当，就当没把你要马些完了。 राशि जो मैं ना मैं गोबर से लाओ सुनाई ना यानी चेता नो रे यानी राशि जो करता राशि जो टूबा ये ना यानी जनरेट ना जो चेता ठीक मारे डोमा ने टूबा जो खेलने को बच्चे होते हैं ना चेता नो मुझे सकता है.
So here the distinction between the non-intrinsic existence and non-existence. So it must be understood. It's a very, very important to understand. And because if one lacks the understanding of if one lacks the understanding of the distinction between these two, then one will fall into the extreme views. So therefore, whenever we talk about non-intrinsic existence, when we should bear in mind that we're not talking about non-existence.
nga so ge de ge ta da cha po shu du ga ga xie do wa de sa na ba mo zi chen ge de wo jin so na ne pe na nyu go da wo ji le pe ja wa na nyu go de ne de ma de yo ma re de ma de me wa ye na ya ne ra shi ji tu ba ji ma re nyu go ra shi ji tu ba ke ne na ne nyu go ko no to ma de yo ba ji ke le ge je ge re to ma de yo na ko ji chen la de ne yo se ke che de xie sa ra ge ma re de ja na nyu go de ne me ba cha do re es 아니 요거 가사 요거 때는 매바체는 메탈 홍도 그래서 근데 랑시 투바 켈레는 때때 켈레사라고 말해서
So for instance, if we were to accept the siblings that exist from the start, in other words, intrinsically, in other words, then there's no way that we can there's no room to fit into it of dependent originations, dependently existence has no room for that. Whereas if one accepts the lack of intrinsic existence, such as siblings and so forth, then the dependent origination is tenable.
요거 랑시 좀 맞으나 요거 코로기 요거 대시 받아 가서 요거 대시 네비기 동아에 예시지 장발라 아니 요거 되게 내루라 과래 그래서 제가 코로 하자데 저 요거라 아니 랑시 좀 맞으나요 요거 매 먹어 봐다 랑시 주는 요거데 예시데 메테발라 아니 예시 장바지라 아니 오미가상 건진 거데 빼냥가 전부래서
Siblings does not exist intrinsically. However, it does exist. That is important to understand. And when we talk about the siblings' lack of intrinsic existence, it doesn't exist by its own side. That doesn't mean that siblings does not exist. So this too need to be understood. If you said if the sibling exists but doesn't exist intrinsically, it exists that doesn't exist intrinsically, but it lacks intrinsically. That doesn't mean that it's not non-existence. It's non-existence.
Rashi mebata mebani sewa shiba tsise lejang soma yin te jiro. Chedang rashi je mebata tene mebani yi cheba te tsise lepe sebo soya re soba.
So here it says the clear definition between the absence of intrinsic existence and non-existence is also set forth in the Chandra with clear words.
Chike to se kete teta chu ju mo na rashi mebata na ba jana 아니 와나 강장된 데제 랑게 샤와 랑게 셰빌레 넘버메바 넘버메바 메메바네 니지 뇽완 조와 예노 셰솜바테 탕치 춘데 세완 조라스 레던 저블라 고아토비 고토비 샤나 주 메바 소원 조와 예노 조바샤데 코자 메바 마이테 코자네 여바당 매바 니스마 까네 니스메비 냥엘레 데비 종체도 도와 세와시바 예노 코자네 레셰바포 당 제부 라 소바 메도시 마와 마이데 와나 지시바나 와나 지시나 데다 장시 메도시 세와조바 예노 제때 장시 메바 넘바 샤와 셰바 메테비 셔 예바 소다 두바 니도 냐나 대 여바 마이테 장시다 제바나 코나라 샤와 마토위 셔 장시 메바 나 코나라 샤와 통이 셔로 셰송소 로샤네야 살 수입差不多
That's all.
디가 나한테 주주시라면
So now here, the clear definition between the absence of the intrinsic existence and non-existence is also set forth in the chanted previous clear words. So objection, this claim that things like intrinsic existence will wipe out everything that Bhagavan said, such as you experience the fruition of karma that you yourself have done. By making this claim, you mistakenly deny karma and its effects. Therefore, you are the supreme nihilist. Reply: we are not nihilist. We refute both the position of existence and the proposition of existence and the proposition of non-existence. We illuminate the path free from these two, the path that leads to the city of nirvana. We also do not claim karma, agent, effect, and so forth do not exist. What do we say? We posit that this lack intrinsic existence. Objections. There's still a defect in your position because it is not tenable for things that lack intrinsic nature of functions. Reply. Again, there is no such defects because functionality is not attested that which has intrinsic nature. Functionality is attested only in that which lacks intrinsic natures. So this essentialist position as the denial of the intrinsic nature prevents karma from giving rise to sefer. This is no different from the assertion by the Tibetan who claim to Madhyamikas that arguments which refutes intrinsic existence refutes cause and effect.
this 되게 대다 가르쳐 버서서나 아니 레샤지제 너자 태바데 장시 메발라 코나레 티그레마도 장시지 주발라 레샤지제 너자 태그 말이에요. 도데 테레.
So in brief, what this says here is now the functionality of the karma and that's karma and its agent and fruitions can only establish within the view of non-intrinsic existence. Whereas if one accepts the intrinsic existence, if one accepts something that exists by its own side, then suddenly there's no way that we can establish the functionality of karma, agent, and its effect.
다다 가서 제 장시지 저다 다다 제제에 나게 찍고 치고 말이에요. 근데 나칼로서 따바기 취연수 줘봐대요. 때들라 때는 줘도마도 장시지 줘봐요 말이에요. 그래서 리셰기 취이 되나 근데 때제지 과세들이 그래서 과대서 라바를 지러 와. 근데 델레테스 차와도 가서 때제 동고 때제 차쇼대 지젤라 때는 때제들 라바 근데 델레 야스 때제 차와시다 라기 차실라 때는 수수 쳐도 열에서 델레 차쇼데 뭐 단지 계시요디 주수주 쳐도 뭐 이샤산도 봐도 유티는 좀 디상이야 말세데 아니 단지 통화 이베 데데데 다디 과데레소나 아니 유고비데스 이델로디 셰요
So there are ways that Madhyamaka Prasangika establish the dependent originations in terms of their subtleties. First, Madhyamaka Prasangika introduces the gross level of dependent origination, which is cause and effect. Because the effects depend upon its cause, and cause give rise to its effects, and so on. And this is a very gross level of establishment of the dependent originations by Madhyamaka Prasangika. And then if it go further, go to the subtle level of dependent origination, as everything's in events are dependent upon its own, its own parts, the parts or proponents, and so on. And so then if it go further again, the subtlemost dependent originations, as everything that exists are mere imputation of one's own mind and concept. So that is the subtlemost dependent originations. So if you look at here, the way the Madhyamaka has laid out those dependent originations in terms of their subtleties, first they establish the gross level of dependent originations, then goes back, then next is a subtle level of dependent origination and the subtlemost dependent originations.
Ta tela rangshi meba yina, ne rangi mo, mare rangshi meba yina, rangshi goba dele, rangshi goba de sada, lele nami jungwa sewa joro she go maye, mawa ne rangshi gobi ribe, jendre kaba deba tang, deba che meba sonwa wo, jendre ka na che ta, chiti so joro sheba ne, Oma pada ngoma wa nike deba raya. Oma pada jendre kaba midela. Ngoma ya ne ranjin go na jendre kyang nyepa go go nyane oma pala mepa ba chepa tawa sero. Pecho oma ba keche wa peche wa ne ranjin go na ripa te jendre go ba deba ngoma wa na da tuba na la. 原讲啥？这里边我把我们路是写的，点了没把当哦。这把这一年都国家的没把那没把满意的，原本意思嘛我写的，他比人写我写把严弄我说的，没把路的忙着啥？啊，
那就可能的那
记下一道呢？
那说了是。
写我写把严弄。
原本你怎么三年，特别能少写吧，学生的，原本的没事呢。how many times classes? So the Madhyamaka and essentialists agree that if one denies cause and effect, one becomes the most extreme sort of nihilist. However, the Madhyamaka does not deny cause and effect. Still, the essentialist calls the Madhyamaka nihilist or annihilationist. Supposing that if you refute intrinsic nature, then you certainly must also refute cause and effect. Most Tibetans who claim to be a Madhyamaka seems to agree with the essentialist assertion that if an argument refutes intrinsic nature, it must also refute cause and effect. Yet, unlike essentialists, the Tibetan seems pleased that reason refute cause and effect, taking this to be the Madhyamaka system. In answer to this objection, Chandrakriti's response: "We are not nihilists. We eliminate the proposition of existence and non-existence. We eliminate the paths to liberations. The rest of the passage shows that we avoid the position of existence and non-existence by saying we do not claim the karma and effect and so forth are non-existent. Chandrakriti avoids nihilist positions. We would be nihilist if we assert the cause and effect and so forth do not exist, but we do not assert this in response to the question, well, what do you hold? Chandrakriti says, we posit or assert that this karma and effect and so forth, like intrinsic nature, it thereby avoids the position of existence.
Chitiji, or Ranluki Tawa Lebicala, Ranuma is a long Jonjora. It's at the Ibache. Data tuber serial law you do, Virgin Oma for Picheta, Picha Oma by Inset again. Then Mawachi, Goma, the Chibaresh, so it did Data Chiteri.
So, well, all those philosophical tenets on their own philosophical tenets, on their own philosophical views are said to be accepted to be a middle way. So therefore, the middle way view. So therefore, the Buddhist essentialist calls the Madhyamaka nihilist, and by claiming themselves as a middle way upholder of the middle way view. So what it says here is that the most of the Tibetan who claim to be a Madhyamaka seems to agree with essentialist. They have a similar view with the most of the Tibetan who claim to be a Madhyamaka. Agree with the essentialists, which means they have the same views with the essentialists, Buddhist essentialists.
Rutamo Sibichi Sona, Ginger Mebate, Chetale, Ginger Meba Kellen, Sona Cheta Nebate, Tawa Kitchamarion of Chipara was. Edaya, Umabatanda, Chia doesn't take it to Biocarabala, Biocarabagi, Umaba Yin singing this, Tawa is the Della here, Sona, Nigomo, the Chibareji, Enaya, Tanedo, Umabai, but Chigdos.
So this can be referred to the Tibetan scholars of the early dissemination of Dharma in Tibet, who claim themselves as a Madhyamaka, upholder of the Madhyamaka view, but when it comes to their view, it is similar to the view of Buddhist essentialist.
Oma Pasangete, any Mapa Mama the Cheta Mama Kani, any Tani Sibi, Tapilan Dogete.
So, from our own side, what is meant by the middle way view, the view of the standpoint of the middle way, is someone who actually clears the extreme views of eternalism and extreme view of nihilism, and who actually paves the path or the way to the state of liberation. That is what is called middle way.
Della Coja della so beto she bima shebene beppa mawa seba ede lede so beba dena beba joa le kone temede jeba o wana jishema jibana lede so deda ranji beto she joba doba yeno shema wane maye ne yoba ma seba yeno Rangi Mebala Shaji Metebe, Nipa Soda Dogo Shepane, Chuju Meba Mimayi, Rangi Meba Mao She, Majang, Hakubichu, Rangi Mena, Jende Meteba, Tadon Pom Mini So, Mini She, Mobo Mao Zoba De. Kui Lula, Rangi Meba, Meba Nichi Mebe, Yeta Zoba O. Leland Jun Jeba, Ju, Jeba Jeba Soji. Shaji Rangi Yoban Mironga, Rangi Meba Konala, Dedaruma Sonso,
The statement there is still a defect in your position because it is not tenable for that which lacks intrinsic nature to function. Indicates that it's essentialist objection. You Madhyamaka say that intrinsic nature, but you still cannot escape the fallacy that we have already stated. Without intrinsic nature, cause and effects are not tenable. Those essentialists raise their objections because in their system, there's no difference between the absence of intrinsic nature and non-existence. In reply, Chandrakriti says that functions such as cause give rise to its effects, and are impossible if the context in the context of intrinsic existence, and are possible only in the absence of intrinsic existence. Also, Chandrakirt's commentary on the 400 stanza says.
是的，
老
把它讲，他的这个是你讲有七岁的人这边的多，7岁的7的人，那你要他的面他看的3个人是，
老我的老我。
你把这讲的了，这讲到对了，
not so. So the paragraphs that we have read earlier are all the explanation of the clear words, Chandrakirti's clear words. You know, what is meant by, you know, what kind of view that will take us to the nihilistic view, and what kind of view that will take us to the, you know, extreme view of permanence and so forth. It's an eternalism and so forth. So let's take a break here. 10 minutes.
저기 왜 저기 산나마 동안이나 그 이게 때나마 이지마 때나 배나 배나 가서 중국비네시 에는 랑주비를 봤어야지 다나 가서 얘네도 중국비네시 때나 배워라 돈이도 별 하도랑 질러 잡아나 아니 동반인세에 가리 동반인을 세고 아래 아니 가리 동반인세나라고 가르치는라고 거를 가서 다나 지 로드니에서도 지 통화의 레드 산대 통로데 지 창소 연수 줘봐대 아니 노비네지를 열어 그 동반세나 가르치네 고 가르치네 우주전에 동바세는 가르치네 세고 세유비가라 아니 나초기 단다게 따다데 첼레게네 유무비네실레 첼레게바티 따네 아니 단지 너너나게 통마멤버 코드에 대인자네 아니 최하게 러데 따데데 아니 첼레게샤 게 나히지다 미두다 아니 매바 가르레스네 아니 다 단다금비네실레 때는 펴도
So at this point, what we are doing here is we're trying to establish actual existence of things in event. In other words, the base of things in event. Upon the establishment of the basis, then one can, you know, go through the stages of the path, which will then take us to, which will lead us to understanding of how things really are. So first we need to establish the basis. So things that exist, things actually exist, then why we need to forcefully talk about emptiness? Why we need to talk about it forcefully? Why we are forcing ourselves into understanding of emptiness if things exist? Now, here, you know, when we talk about things actually exist and it's emptiness, it sounds like a contradictory, but however, if you really carefully think why we are talking about the emptiness, how the emptiness can be fit into this existence, actual existence, is because the way we look at things and events are beyond its existence, beyond reality. Our way of looking at things and our way of understanding how things exist is actually contradictory to the reality. So therefore, for this reason, why that we forcefully understand emptiness, the nature of emptiness, because it is because of not being able to understand how things really are. We are revolving within the secular existence and not being able to get out of within this secular from the secular existence.
当俺从这呢，就是那差不多把当从这我的卡卡有的些老缺是吧？别呢，他就是我这个单单就往看了呢，多年俺都没什么，得了苦我才就说是吧？但这个那最得看了些了，就了，当然了，上些就嘛就把现在的老的上些就做面的，每个人是老的的，养成这个都说了吧？但顶这个别呢现在把的缺着的把的全了。 법에 전화를 써봐 대다 아니 가자 한시 좀 캔리 그래 아니 탈란 홍도에서는 되게 더 뭐서 정으로 양 쏘도 대주기 켜반 나주기 주부 담바듯이 단다 아니 다 된저 차유네 라신로 뭐고요나 딱 쏘다 거네 주마코로 가고 말어.
So it is quite difficult subject for all of us. But you know, we can't blame ourselves. You know, we just stepping into it and we're, you know, trying to study and trying to understand. If you look at, you know, what Lama Tsongkhapa has stated in his Praise to Dependent Originations, where it says, there are many beings that really, you know, surprises me by accepting dependent originations. Yet at the same time, when they said there's no such intrinsic existence, then they reject existence of all things in event. So that's actually referring to the great beings, such as the great Indian masters, such as, you know, even the Dharma and Dignas and so forth. You know, they, on the one hand, they, you know, complete their, you know, they're accepting dependent originations. On the other hand, they reject lack of intrinsic existence of things in event.
맞은 대로 지원해서 이런 게시도 단다 되는 정으로 저기 대 양수 손도도 다 총론도 쳐라돼서 다다 오미게 따와니 말했을 때 가정에서 다 이제다 지수 좀 비치도 소외 저러면도 대다 시지 말했어 로도 된 나서에나 딱 러브를 지러와 다 뒤수때 땀바 코너 제나 자네 주피 파워로 다 주피게 나셔면은 대나게 셀 통벌행이 시작하버렸 되게 좀 담바듯이 아니 유무비네스게 라신 된다라다 배지 뭐 메시어로 말이야 맞춰 봐잖아.
No. So we had in discussions. I had in discussions with some of my, you know, colleagues back in Europe that although that we find in the many texts that such as great Indian masters, you know, who are so intelligent and whose reasonings are infallible. The reasoning they have established are something that is infallible. The reasoning established by Dharmakriti and Dignath and so forth. Yet at the same time, in the many texts, it's mentioned that they lack an understanding of non-intrinsic existence. So we had a discussion, you know, that maybe this is just for the disciples who are not, you know, suitable enough to really you know, listen to the teachings of the Madhyamaka, for them to, in order for them to, you know, prepare themselves or prepare themselves to be able to become themselves as a suitable to listen to the teachings of the Madhyamaka. So they have established this, what so-called the lower, you know, philosophical tenets. Otherwise, those beings are great. You know, they are such an intelligent individual. So how can they lack this understanding? So we had this kind of discussions when I was in you know, when I was in Europe.
당한테 되는 오메 가자 계시 쉐부가라다 배우하려 봐 깨차 말에 단다 배우하려 게 따와지는 게 나는 가서 이제 같이 다 gello basana nga hamba chatra meshe ma do tele shemba ki ta yu mo chawa tela ene gasha ta to bada ranji be gasha sa je ma do ji yete ne to ba ti sa me ba sa to na da sha shi je na ge jo tu gu ma re senge jin jo tu gu ma re senge je da ga yin sa ro de so de ke cha de so ta na kan mo bo yong do da jo ro ma chi yo me ta wa ni ma re senge do da de la ge mo bo do da ya nga so do ji ya 공부를 있지 이제는 메시마도 라신주 두번지 켈린 진짜라 텐데를 또 생에다가 나 가와르지 내가 소기 때 소소야 공시지 제선 다음에 메시마도다 이제는 고아지라고 믿어 라신 두번 켈린 일라 쇼로를 텐데지 거래 생에지 러나.
So there are many special great masters and teachers, especially who are the followers of the standpoint of the scholars of earlier dissemination of Dharma in Tibet, whose identification of object of negation is then their identification of object of negation is in accordance with the Madhyamaka Swatantika, not the Prasangikas. Most of them, because when they reject, when we as our own system, when we reject the lack of intrinsic existence across the board, the entire spectrum of phenomena, and that doesn't really, agree. It's hard for them to agree. So therefore, if for them, the way they identify the object of negation is in accordance with Madhyamaka Swatantika, not really Madhyamaka Prasanjika. It is really true, because such rejections of intrinsic existence across the board and this entire spectrum of phenomena, it's only followers of Lama Tsongkhapa.
다들 쉬어요. 다 맞아. 저런 걸 같이 신데 존재 정가봐 세는 서로 이제 담바데 최진 바시라 샤워에서 하는 거는 그래서 쉬우지 여러 뜻이 되다. 다 가족이 뭐 소년의 좀 코로나랑 따지체 통해지나 따지리마도 더 소소라마 소소 되면서 지 차고요나 이제 거네 저와이나 가서 집에 다 뭐뭐 쉬우지 송도 저런 뭐지 주탐하기 감각이 제일 패대 아니 감각 코로나 신주제네 아니 신주제네 태사바라고지 잘라는 것은 드리지는 것에 제는마도 영 파쇼기 좋다 지지리 최주 좋다 계세서야 매봐 아니 제바체네 태사바기 잘라서로 지는 것에 제나 리그를 쏘도.
Therefore, Lama Tsongkhapa is known as the great pioneer of the land of snow. He's a pioneer, great pioneer or tabulars of land of snow. So it is really true, because the way Lama Tsongkhapa established his view, it's not just that is what he believed, but rather he has gone through a rigorous studies of all those texts written by great Indian masters, comparing those. And then he established his own view by following the teachings of the great Indian masters of the Madhyamaka Prasanjika. It is also said that the reason why Lama Tsongkhapa came, very late is because it is to establish the actual view of Madhyamaka, to examine all those and explore all those teachings, and then bring to understanding of what is meant by Madhyamaka Prasanjika's standpoint. Or in other words, he is the revolutionary, who revolutionized this this is the view of Madhyamaka Prasangika, and its view of emptiness or dependent originations in land of snow.
다가 저지 로지의 정상이 되는 상황도나요. 저런 뭐죠? 오미게 따와니 사기 아니 제사기 정지 내가 제쇼된 네 고물루르다 빠된 다와서 산제장이 용로와 종호가 요새 딜 때네 오미 따와니네 네 된데 떠바기 네 네도 담발레제네 네 밤면다와기 당완제네 네 그 가사 되바데 되샤 제르 송우다 예 예상가서 니네마 저런 저기만 좀 그런만 좀 제바기 오미지 단다 좀 나나마 레베가라 네 저런 거네 저는 저런 뭐잖아 배견라마 네 배치 자카만은 지지 라마 때에 송어레다 뭐 라마 소리 지지 라마 소리 생데 치치미도 아니 빠된 다와도 산제장다 고불루도 좀 그런 되가는 너무만 도지 그 얘는 미도한테 메시지 취재해서 아니면 정으로 나오소도 뭐네 예사로
So here, Lama Tsongkhapa's standpoint, his philosophical standpoints are solely based on the standpoints of Arya Nagarjuna, Chandrakriti, and Buddhapalita. It is after going through the rigorous studies, contemplation, meditation on those teachings, it is then said that Lama Tsongkhapa has gained the perfect view of middle way. Having gained his perfect view of middle way, he then composed the praise to dependent originations, and ultimately praising Buddha Shakyamuni, how he has propounded these teachings, the profound teachings of the great dependent originations. So it is really true. But if you really look at the Lama Tsongkhapa's text, the philosophical text, when you look at the Lama Tsongkhapa's philosophical text, the way he quoted from the different texts, he never says such and such great Tibetan master has said this and that, but rather he will always quote from the great Indian masters, the writings of the great Indian masters, such as Chandrakriti, Buddhapalita, and the Chandrakritis and so on, because although the Lama Tsongkhapa has said to be relied upon almost 100 teachers of great Tibetan masters of the past, but when he actually composed the text, his compositions, his writings are always based upon the writings of the great Indian masters. He never quoted from his own teachers, such as the great Indian masters and so forth. You will always find the great Indian deities or the sutras by the Buddha himself.
되지. 다 가지 뒤로 던져질래. 다 산제장의 던지기 뒤로 제가 가서는 던지기 뒤로 좀 가는지 지엘이나 다 가지 이 잠을이 되가나 오미기 따와 용다전에 때나 벤데 주다 쓰였는데 다 저런 뭐지 코나래도 이제 가서는 저 간사라니 오미 따와니네 주가 통해다 다 뭔데 산지 메쳐봐 배역으로 다 용다 코너 토는 주티 오미 타지기 따와 내 인생의 배능이다 배제 잠을린 거나 저런 것이 코나래도 이제 다 간제 저런 좀 주소 바비고야나 내가 뒤로 되시는 것이 그 말이야.
이런 제 출신 알아 봐.
저런 뭐지 패드데 제제 패조데 제 패조로 와. 얘나야 사제기 땜바기 티 고물루도 티 빠르게 주티게 세다네. 되게 빠르 때라 잠을린 되고나 미 샤수제제 우메다와 때라 뱅이세요. 맞아요.
So it is safe to say that there's not one individual who was able to establish this the middle way, the Madhyamaka Prasangika standpoint, unmistaken Madhyamaka Prasangika standpoint, other than Lama Tsongkhapa. After the emergence of after the degenerations of the great teachings of the Dharma in India, and so that's only Lama Tsongkhapa who was able to publicly teach the Madhyamaka Prasangika's view, who publicly taught and who composed the texts and publicly and published and and distributed. There's no anyone who is able to do that other than Lama Tsongkhapa. Of course, there might be, of course, that's without a doubt. There were many beings, and individually they may have gained their insight into the emptiness in accordance to Madhyamaka Prasangika. However, they have not given publicly. They have not, propound those view publicly, teachings of the view for Madhyamaka Prasangika's view publicly. So it is only Lama Tsongkhapa who did that.
Sanje da ko tendere sanje zam chenge yo marwa ina susu ngone omege tawal ji tosan senare ni koye jongji le tendege ko jebe tamba sanje meje ba ji jongde la rani ji koye ko ra de susu ngone ba retan se metu ngeji ni ta ko zombo jirwa.
So therefore it is very fortunate for all of us to be able to go through the teachings of the Lama Tsongkhapa and to be able to having such a wonderful opportunity to engage in and discussions on the teachings of the Lama Tsongkhapa, especially the middle way teachings.
Kolama la medagi te bache sona ani lama singe te ta yen de kyun ju ne ro ji che chen chen yin sa ne ani me se gi so sa ya da ani omi ge ta wa ne to sa la ani sa pa to te che ba chen bo ya sa ro.
So sometimes it is good to reflect one's mind upon the great masters, their inner qualities, reflect upon their qualities. So we can reflect upon their qualities by knowing their activities, especially their Dharma activities. Because if one is able to reflect one's mind upon the qualities of those masters, and then we will accumulate merits. And because the Guru is said to be the source of all the qualities, all the attainments. So therefore, we accumulate merits, and also by having accumulated merits, then one will be able to realize the middle ways, or this unmistaken middle way. 10 points.
Labado Jerome Chichada in the Resun Judy and Naba in so already, Labado Ninjaman may number 2 by in so already. Now, Matsugi de Jean Coronye in Jibicala, the Hatonda with the Jibica Corona, Missing Debachana, Dei Parigi, and the Tenigi Junior Suda, and the Nijicala and the Sherez Lecture and the Missing Chibaya said, Coach, teacher the tenants dancing in the young Menda and Yodo.
So, moreover, the Lama Tsongkhapa is embodiment of the three great beings, such as Marjapani, Avalokiteshvara, and Manjushri. So, and also Lama Tsongkhapa is also well known. He is well known by all those great beings as a emanation of Manjushri. So it is really, worthwhile for all of us to really appreciate his teachings, and sometime, try to study the biographical anecdote of the Lama Tsongkhapa, so that will enable you to reflect your mind upon the qualities of Lama Tsongkhapa.
Dāne ngōpo mēmbā māwa māyīn tē tēnchēn chāwān yōngwā māyō yīmbī shērō. Chūne ngōpo māwa shī kāna, mārē shē, māwa shī kāngshē nā sā. Māyīn tē tēnchēn chāwān yōngwā māwa yīmbī shērō. Chūne māwa shī kāngshē, shī chē nā, tēnchēn chāwān yōngwā māwa yang tenjin jawa juwe ten kanshe na rangshi mebi ten rangshi che machebi ten tang juma tang mi je tang zonye tang chisi chongchen tang chupa tang melang tang tsungbi rangshi che jen jebu juwe ten tang tongpa nye tang da mebi ten tang she ten je to deba ngobo yu me je ta isu ma wa se chu ten no so do deba de ji lo ra che.
Yes, sir. So let's read through the text again here. Also, Chandrakirti's commentary on the 400 stanza says, we are not proponent of the non-existence, for we are proponent of the dependent arisings. Are we proponent of real things? No, because we are proponent only of dependent arisings. What we propound, we propound dependent arisings. What is the meaning of dependent arising? It means the absence of intrinsic existence. It means intrinsically existent productions. It means that arising of effects whose nature is similar to the magician's illusion, a mirage, a refraction, a phantom city, an emanation, or dream. It means emptiness and self-interest. Chandrakirti shows that by asserting dependent arising, you can avoid the two extremes: the position that things exist and position that things do not exist. We avoid the position that things exist by explaining that dependent arising means to intrinsically existence, production, and avoid the position that things do not exist, indicating that dependent arising refers to the arising of effects and are like a magician's illusions.
Pero nga so ta tende sene ta ngubin ta tende ye ne ta de ngubin ne sire ta nga so ben sanje le so de chu ji ni ka ze ba tende ni le zang de ju se de tende ni le zang de ju so na ani no ya de ke ma ko ngubin ne se rang to no ro ji ma to.
So we are establishing nothing, but we're establishing how things really are. That is what we were doing here, right? We that's what Buddha has stated, that everything that exists, it begins from dependent originations, and everything that is there are all dependent upon dependent. It exists because of dependent originations.
Ngaba da nga so tende la ben repeat je bo se la ro a tende ye de ba la tene ani yata de meta ni ga chi cha de se to go yin sa ne ani tende la mi tende je ba la repeat je bo se la ge de je se de.
So it is because of that, the dependent originations, the reasoning of dependent originations is the king of all the reasonings, because it is by reasoning of this dependent originations, one will be able to eradicate the views of nihilism and views of eternalism.
To tanda de de te hana repeat je bo te shi to bo de la ani da de ngo bo me ba ma ma de se de ngo bo tene me ba ma re ka ri cha sa na tende ro wa sa la. Ani chögi ngopo mawa se na de o yitela ngopo mawa se de demba chu ngopo demba chu ma ni te tende re se de tende ye tanya to me ba ma re tende ro as demba chu ba ma re tende ro as te.
Therefore, what it says here is, now things exist conventionally, it is because dependent originations. Things doesn't exist intrinsically, it is because dependent originations. It is dependently designated or dependently existence.
Maso de tanda samota ji ye ne temba chona ma temba je be ko la ne mawan da me de chu sha je to se de mawan da me ba se ye de ye kwa de ne tende ma wa de ko go de so do.
So therefore, we find that some praise to Buddha Shakyamuni says, your speech is incomparable. Your incomparable speech, which is Mawadami in Tibetan, which is incomparable speech. The incomparable speech here refers to his teachings on dependent originations.
라바데 저노바지 템벌 tö상 제바데 텐데 마이 톤데 템벌 tö상 제네 tö바 텐데 tö바 차그리마도 인텔리전바 tö바 차그 맞으세네 니 저노바지 텐데 tö바 노라 아니 텐데 tö비고네 tö바데 tö바 텔리전바데 tö바 마레소 소야도 텐데 손지데 제다 만다와지레 소도
because also the Lama Tsongkhapa stated that the praise, the most supreme praise to Buddha Shakyamuni is the praise of dependent originations, because dependent origination is taught only by the Buddha. Therefore, it says there's no other praise that can suppress the praise to dependent originations.
야. 맞아. 텐데 생에데 깨쳐지 시유 비가라 제바쳐서 이지라 그래요. 텐데 생에지 소소 시에서나 소소 라반은 대바치 거였다. 그러와. 텐데 시비토는 제바체네 깨쳐지 시고야나. 아니 소소 대바치 커네. 아니 제달라 레다 마레스네. 제바쳐서 레비소지래.
If one accepts dependent originations, then we will find a basis upon which we can examine, we can analyze. So, in other words, we will be able to have something in us where we can actually, where we can actually establish as a basis upon which we can examine how things really are.
맞아 되죠. 맞아 되죠나 땡세디 찔라 더가찔라 지 랑수 메투가 찔 거기도 땡세디 지 제다 찔레 땡네 여바르 땡세라 유비가라 아니 나초이나 코로랑수 메투가 지 땡데 거기.
So normally when we talk about that something that is dependent upon something, and the very word that dependent upon something indicates that such things doesn't exist by its own right? Because it is dependent upon others.
정아서 뒤에 땡데 코로 지골 과래데 땡시 추니 먼도세네 제 정로 양 정도데 안들라마 지소인시메 땡시 추니 먼도세데 땡세데 콜라 뭐 젠라데메 중세데 콜라 타녀 되었지 중신 지된 추여 땡세데 근데 중세데 콜라 칠레 용비 손에 지고 지 샤와 제 니에지게 지 비자 동비 손에 지고 땡세데 코로이 뭐 예치도 지도 산나 거요다 세디 텐종 생에 되게 고아데 쇼지어를 써다 가지 데니 텐종 생에 되게 대바니가 되어 써다
Tenjung in Tibetan, which is dependently originated or dependent originations. But this two syllables or this term establish both conventional phenomena and ultimate phenomena. Because here now ten or the dependent indicates things exist dependently, not intrinsically, and that then the Jung, Jung, again the Jung, indicates things exist, things lack of intrinsic existence. Oh, sorry. It's the other way around. Other way around. So therefore, dependent originations talks about, indicates things doesn't exist intrinsically, and originations indicates things exist conventionally.
야, 단지 제자바기 제코로 도도기 렌자서텔라 아니 저런 영어버 매발라기 라기미 가르쳐선 데데레 라기인스 아니 덴바투바 레베스네 덴바투바 레 라기미 가르쳐는 데데레스네 라요디 아니 마서 지 코로 데데 코로랑 거라저는 아니 덴바데 진 라기 말이다.
So if we were to rely our reasoning upon the dependent originations, and we will not lose the actual existence of things in event, because in the 400 standard says why things doesn't exist intrinsically, because it is dependent originate, it is dependently existence. Why things doesn't exist intrinsically? Because it is dependent origination. So if we were able to hold on to dependent originations, we will not lose the actual existence of things in event.
Tomba tenju tende sha, tomba tenju yu tende sha sebe ke sena ma zena, tanya to yosi tenya tenju yu bi chizi yore, ini rangshi ju chobo mepa tenya tenju yu bi jinsi zi mepa se kong yu di, ini omi gombo ludu ki tawa tatu ba nye sa te, ini noa dang tomba nye di shi chi ki tenda, ini ngeme da jo tunge de rawa.
So, so now, it is because things exist, things exist conventionally, it is because of dependent originations. Things doesn't exist intrinsically, it is because of dependent originations. So this is how the, Nagarjuna has established his ultimate standpoint of things in event. And then also, and similarly, we find in the three principal aspects of the path, Lama Tsongkhapa stated that appearance and dependent originations in appearance should be established, can be established within one locus, within one basis. So that is able to establish both conventional existence and ultimate existence within one basis is the ultimate view of the of protector Nagarjuna.
Tepe nanga chimbo shiwere sonda tende, mazu jiro mo chigi, deshi tende tobe tola be sonye de, misi ki koju yore somdo. Mazu ngone chane deshi tongi tobe tola be, deshi dami tobe tola be sene laya yore da malawa che, deshi tende tobe tola be senge de shiwuji koju yore sene, jibu tamate soncho nabe kala te, yansi sondo do.
So therefore, Dhamma Tsongkhapa stated in his three principal aspects of the path that he, instead of saying one should put in effort to gain a realization of emptiness or selflessness, rather he has said one should put in effort to gain a realization of dependent originations. It has a lot of it's really a telling, it gives you a reason why dependent origination is that important.
Deche, ta tende je tani sisi tende je deche. Ten yang sa tende je ten rangxin je ma che pa la shebe ne ngobo yo ba se la achi. Juma la so ba tang dra yu jebu jungwa tende je ten to ten ba ne ngobo me ba ma wa se ba yin no. Tena ngobo ne rangxin la sheba tang ten shi ale ngobo ne rangxin la sheba tang denshi nipa la sheba ni le ngobo yo pa ma yi ngobo ne rangxin ji zhu pa kwa na la sha ngobo me pa ma yi ne ngobo ne denshi nipa ngobo la sha de teni sewa rangxin ka ji jima tabi jabu yo pa tenbi sharo so.
Therefore, things may refer either to intrinsic existence or to capacity to perform functions. Between these two, the things in essentialist position that things exist refers only to intrinsic existence. Things in the position that things do not exist refers to things that perform functions. For in avoiding these two extremes, Chandrakirti refutes intrinsic existence and indicate that there do exist cause and effect that are like a magician's illusions, more of which Chandrakirti's commentary on the 400 stanza says.
This ngasu de tante call in the same Jota Ma Kashalo Mobo Ma Selo Edicola, and it Mobo Demba Tuba Mawa, and then Mobo Rashi Tuba Mawala, and it Segres, Mobo Yoba Ma saying. Mobo Meba Ma said the Tanya the Meba Maimba, and Mobo Tension Niba, Koron Mobo Tension Niba Mubitsini, the Ricky Tension Niba Mobo Kogo and Sonda, Jungiman Jashi Bukola, Kuala and Songa.
So when we often find in the text by saying that Buddhist essentialist and non-essentialist. The essentialist are here refers to the beings who actually accepts, who propound things that exist intrinsically. The non-essentialist refers to the individual who accepts non-intrinsic thing, existence of non-intrinsicness and also the functionality that within the non-intrinsic existence there is perform the functionalities.
당연히 로인다 이놈. 제야 지자비 제발에 양 지른 대비 이제 전바 매당 매도 시에 지게다 마. 그거잖아 땡진 저원 좀 세워 마이노. 대제다 여바 대단에 대단에 녀나 전바 시에샤와 로바이. 대로 로바宽난 좀 시에 로베 니 Number job zedo, the shere jembi mipa, ne debi mobo yino. Gete ranking mood, yonane, the jemba yubi, dela, maybe shere ranking mood to by jena. Can't get said debi mobo de rangi me, but it's dela maybe jemba on rangi me by yende, the shere loba yino xie xiawa zhubo, loba xie xiawa ne rashi meba tang, tenjin zhawa njungwa, xie xiawa duen xie mayin ba te, ngobo mebi duen ne, lobi duen mayin no. Debi ngobo namba tangche do meba ne mayin de, zhenba xiawa yinbi xie tang, deyin zheba tongyi xie ro, rangi ngo yoba mayin de, taba ni de tayi xie ro, 무슨 짐바 타위 셔로 어치시 데발라 소비 로바 데다 예메장 민바 랑경을 주바 민바 로바단 준비 된 텐제제 된 인제 뭐보 메비 된 민바 손베 춘데나 랑경을 주바 데나 뭐보마 예비 타동 인제 데다 여바장의 마이 뭐보 마와 유유마 아니 뭐보 마 유마와 미노 예전의 시절로게 뭐보나 대신이 비니바 또미 뭐메든 되나 뭐보 매바마와요 매타 동아 인제 대달라 장시 매바마와 매타 동아 미노 후소도 어때봐도 로로 제니 표제장 이거 와요 차보도 로가 샤베지만
So moreover, the Chanakritya's commentary on the 400 stanzas says, question, do you, Madhyamika, claim that there are no memories, that there are no memory consciousness that have their objects and things of the past? Reply, who would claim that such do not exist? We do not eliminate dependent arisings. And that's Aryadeva himself gives a precise statement of how memory exists. Therefore, the arising of what we call memory is only an unreal subject with an unreal object. Therefore, what memory observes is something in the past. If the past is essentially existed, then the memory of it would be observing an object that essentially exists. Therefore, that memory would be essentially existing. But insofar as that past things lack intrinsic existence, the memory observing it also lack intrinsic existence. Therefore, Aryadeva has established the past object and the memory of it are unreal. unreal means only lacking intrinsic existence and dependent arising. It does not mean the non-existence of things that can be performed functions. A past things is not entirely non-existence because it is an object of memory, and it is object of memory, and its effects can be seen. It also does not essentially exist, for it would have to be permanent, and it would have to be directly apprehensible. Chanakirti says that this past object and such are not utterly non-existent and are also essentially non-existent. He explained that unreal or the false means being dependent arising and does not mean that things do not exist.
Lisa.
Now,
Data yeme the sona say te jarin da te ba ja. Dan de ge ne dang de wo de de sha. Ran shi ji tu me na pe na ngo bi ji jin do jin jo tu ma ri jin jo ma to na ne ngo bo tem bi de bi ngo bo tem bi ba yo ro tem bi yu de ne te ge ma re se de na de ji bo po.
So this is others, for the objection, the question which says that if the thing doesn't exist intrinsically, then how can the memory works? How can the memory functions and so forth?
Ai, ta ma te wo de ja.
We'll stop here with this today.
其实你个人啷个做一他，我们用了刚写那嘛写那，去台北的搞不也比他那个前年的，你给我了的呢，让去感觉呢，当时嘛这边没把写呢，你多年都被写那送着的，那就2万牛的让进来进来做个上节课帮我的写，你写完了的呢，你让去时间他就做个上节课帮他呢吧，就你让你给写图呗，你把他那不去，你用说噻。 아니 제 네바야 내나시가 아마 상자는데 신경도 소sana 아니 제지의 생이 초예배도는 뭐하는 많잖아.
So let's do our dedications. Having discussed on the middle way for this 2 hours, we have accumulated tremendous amount of merits. Although we may not have completely gain a pure understanding of what is meant by emptiness and so forth. We all have aspiration to know the meaning of dependent originations, and we have genuine appreciation to the teachings of the dependent originations of the middle way. So therefore, it is by this means, well, whatever the merits that we may have accumulated at this 2 hours of time, and also the accumulated merits that accumulated past, present, and futures by oneself and that of all other sentient beings, may all the merits that we have accumulated become a cause for generation of the yoga of understanding in a special shamatha and a special insight.
Nage jeni sabi gewa de yedon ro gyala gabe no cheba juzun lo zon zhaba yi yenbe ni bo rin le ye shu sa ye be yo ye me do zhang ri zhang li je ni de je ma de san je shen do mi de be wa yi 若根能到心了，是不说切我更多呀？妈妈当这边解决别了东西，撒当那这也得少做，多去交给国婆就多说，也多个这上。 面对那个那样那样的，天天人都别人做你，看到阳光高兴啥么的，路边马的给弄着我，弄这家业我不到就急，两把顺便菜肉更多样，两边养的这边接着的。 天别人把根草浪的住，年年周别见到年些说，浪也节节多别浪节年，修着这边张月头给节，若月月就年把这些年。家园电报有人在交接，两把人间就给马家母，悄悄娘把这边说的呢，年节前个一让就把偏偏点点在我心目中，世间家园民众真来。列多相救郎就人别当，他的郎就一郎别的心，家园自把人都终究尽，拉上周边听见周心情，眼见世界莫当年面君，才让更多家园茫茫野，浪荡这往莫就尽。刚才天把叫了去寻经，最近着了怎么得缘财？土地当就大多出西经，扎西将子兄要就一起，就是拉面不菜让点睛，那个真的说着就不当。老上点别这边上松间，若月面色大，念就起，放着若月过月心放松，别当대왕만의 교회 시를 세워 대대 장소에 샤베 세대와 대조지 야베 바웨 제다 제바다 그도 서부 대야 대제대 대다 그저 제서 다로지 개와 대다 다제 로도 대소 시베죠 다제제 고와 고라 초도 고바데 다시 개외 자와 되게죠 조보 시제로도 고와죠 好呀，多谢。
Thank you,
非常
Rinpoche.
不谢。
呀呀，那这谁家的苦呢？
Okay.